How do you feel?
Fine. I didn't expect to see you here today.
Well, I didn't have anything else to do, so I thought I'd drop in and see you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello there, and welcome to this bonus episode of the Laurel and Hardy Blogcast. I'm Patrick Vasey, the author of the Laurel and Hardy blog, and on this special edition of the blogcast, we're going to be focusing on the new US Blu-ray release of Laurel or Hardy, the solo films of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. Now, originally, I recorded this interview that you're about to hear with the intention of including it in episode 10 as an added extra. But my guest and I had so much fun and had such an enjoyable chat, and we recorded so much content that I decided it was better to hold it back and package it up as an extra episode all by itself. So thanks for joining me once again. Why not grab yourself a nice glass of cold tea and settle in for the next hour, and let's talk Laurel and Hardy. So you may recall back in episode 1, we spoke with Rob Stone about Stan and Babe's first meeting in The Lucky Dog, and also about their film careers before they met. As the author of the groundbreaking Laurel or Hardy, the solo films of Stan Laurel and Oliver Babe Hardy, Rob proved to be the ideal guest to talk with us about this early part of the boys' film careers. And during the discussion, Rob tipped us off to a forthcoming DVD and Blu-ray release of rare solo films that he'd been contributing to, both in his role as a Laurel and Hardy author and expert, but also in his role as the moving image curator for the Library of Congress. Well, after months of waiting, Lobster Films released the DVD set in France on the 29th of June 2020. The US Blu-ray release took a little while longer to be announced, but the day finally came in mid-January this year, and my copy arrived through the door just a couple of days ago. So due to the timing of this episode coming out, I haven't actually been able to dive deeply into the set just yet to give it a full review. And so I just reached out last minute to Rob, who kindly agreed to come back onto the show and talk us through the set. So I have great pleasure in saying, Rob Stone, welcome back to the Laurel and Hardy Blogcast.
Thank you for having me again.
It's an absolutely wonderful to have you back, Rob. And I did say this to Steve Masser just the other day. It's really nice that you have come back, because it means I'm probably doing something almost right, which is good. So thanks for coming back.
Well, I didn't change my phone number, so maybe I'm doing something wrong.
Firstly, I just wanted to say congratulations on the new release. I received my copy yesterday, and from what I've seen so far, it's brilliant. I really love it. It's absolutely fantastic. What I really like about it is the fact that we finally got a Blu-ray release that it's giving the solo films the care, the attention, and the respect that I really do think they deserve, and they've been missing for so long. So, I'm really chuffed with it. It's really nice. And we were speaking earlier about the cover showing the boys in their solo films, which a lot of earlier releases haven't done. So, I really respect that. I think that's fantastic. Are you happy with how it's come out, Rob? Because we've been waiting for it for quite some time.
I'm very, very happy. The American release that just came out pretty much mirrors, with only minor changes, of a set that came out in France, in the middle of last year. And the set has been in the works for, I don't know, I can't count the number of Facebook or email attacks that I get saying, you told us it was going to be out. But it finally got out. Very happy with it. Very much a collaborative effort, but one that I think everybody involved with is really happy with.
Great. I should think so. And I apologize for keeping on messaging you on Facebook. I have to say that was me at some point. When is it coming out? Although in fairness, I was getting asked after the first episode of the blogcast, when's the Blu-ray coming out? So I was getting heat, so I was passing it on to you, Rob. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So just first off the bat, can we just ask you if you could explain a little bit about the project, how it came about, and how did you get involved with it?
Well, I wrote this book some 25 years ago about their solo films, so I'm always on the lookout for their films, and it kind of came to a critical mass. At the Library of Congress, one of my duties is to coordinate with various media distributors to put out Blu-rays and DVDs of the holdings of the Library of Congress. And so, we've put out silent women filmmakers, early African-American cinema. We do a lot of work with Kino Lorber. We do a lot of work with Undercrank Productions, which has been Modell. And we've done work with other folks off and on. Did one minor little project with Flicker Alley until this one. But it came to a point to where I'm looking around and I had a bunch of Oliver Hardy films to contribute. Probably 4 or 5 hours more worth of Oliver Hardy films than ended up on the set. So,
oh wow, okay.
Hey, there may be an Oliver Hardy set coming down later, but very, very lacking in the laurels, at least as far as what was put out. The library holds a lot of Stan Laurel material, but everything had been put out. And so Serge Bromberg is probably the biggest Stan Laurel fan I know of. He also happens to run Lobster Films, and he also happens to have quite an archive himself. And Lobster always wanted to do something with the library. So it just, hey, here's two guys who love the Laurel or Hardy solo films. Through the library and through Lobster Films, we had something to offer. And so we started talking a couple years ago and said, you know what, we've got some really good stuff. We looked at what had been put out before. Not just anywhere, mostly like the Slapstick Symposium stuff that had come out earlier. We didn't look at some of the Grade Z productions that had come out because almost by default, anything you put out would be an improvement. But so we looked through and we ended up with this big long list that got pared down to be what the set is. So that the genesis of it was, in part, it's my day job. But it was a perfect meeting of my day job and my hobby. So, and then same with Serge, he's all into that. So, the set came out in Europe on DVD from Lobster. And then, the way our agreements are with video distributors, it's then up to him to seek other distribution. And he has a real good relationship with Flicker Alley. And so he sent it to Flicker Alley to do. And I could not be happier with Flicker Alley because, in the past, when we've done something with a distributor and then they send it somewhere else to get distributed elsewhere, we're kind of out of the loop on that. It's really up to the primary distributor to handle it. I got so many emails from Flicker Alley about, hey, would you like to rewrite the notes? Would you, and then when I wrote the notes, are these okay? Did we edited this? Is that okay? Hey, how about this picture? How about that picture? You mentioned the pictures on the cover are vintage to the solo era of both Stan and Babe. And I helped pick out those pictures. So it was really nice. I mean, that would be really nice on any release we do from the Library of Congress, but it's obviously particularly nice since it's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So yeah, it was just it was a bit of an organic creation, but it was also something that was just part of my day job.
You don't believe me.
What I'd like to ask you as well, Rob, I mean, in the past, I've worked in sort of museum settings for a number of years. So I know there's quite a distinction between restoration and conservation. Should an item be restored to as close to its original condition as possible, or should it be conserved in the state that we find it in now and conserve it so that it's not allowed to deteriorate further, or at least slow down that deterioration process? And we saw from the recent release of the definitive restorations, whilst many people were thrilled with it, there were those who were quite vocal in their disapproval of the restorations. What is your personal take on that restoration versus conservation, Rob?
Well, I personally think there needs to be an attempt to restore the experience, the film. not that print of the film.
Yeah.
When you talk about, pick a title, we talk about hats off. You're not talking about, let's find we find a print and we'll, whatever. You want to restore the experience. So that's why I'm for, if someone has a feature film, but it's missing reel 3, you fill in that reel with stills and some explanatory titles. Have you technically restored the film? Well, you can't restore the film. It's missing bits. So in the strictest sense of the word, you can't restore it. You can kind of reconstruct it. And some people go the other way. Well, this one scene doesn't look as good as the rest of the film. Nobody will miss it. Clip, out it goes, because they're looking they have a different sensibility. I lean on the side that says put back as much of it as humanly possible.
Yeah.
When I was at UCLA, we restored Tilly's Punctured Romance, Chaplin's first feature. Well, start counting, and we'll still be counting tomorrow, the number of different edits and cuts and reissues of that film. And the goal there was, we're putting every bit back into it, because really we didn't know what was the original release. You don't know, because it had been chopped up so many times. So that film was put together with a lot of 35, some 16, even some 8mm, to give everybody everything. And that's a little bit of it too, is give everybody as much as you can. They let them decide what they do or don't want. And so since I'm interested, I think a restoration needs to be moving towards that original experience. I don't see a point in leaving in reissue titles from the 30s for a film from the 20s. When I can when you can, with solid knowledge, recreate the 1920s title. Is that title original? No, but it looks like the original, where the reissue title is a reissue title. And film archives, first and foremost, you conserve the material. You get it, you put it in a good can, you label it properly, you catalog it, put it in nice cold storage. You've conserved it. Then the next thing is to, what we call preserve as found. Take that print, make a copy of it, or a high resolution scan. Okay, now you've got that print as we found it. But then if you have another print, or if you have another information or other knowledge, why not put that together? If somebody wants to, look at I just want to look at it, as found, well, here you go. But most of us don't want to look at a film that doesn't have main title or end title, or has material out of order. One of the films on the set, Mother's Baby Boy, we got that from a collector, and a colleague of mine, George Williman, who worked on most all these films, goes, "Is it okay if I put it back in order?" and I said, "Well, yeah." And so we looked at the film, and then you look at the synopsis, and you go, so we put it back in order, because the film, as it was created, that experience is important. What some guy did 30 years later because he liked it differently, So yeah. So anyhow, I believe, I've heard some of the comments on the Laurel and Hardy set that came out, and I think a lot of the comments are kind of maybe not into the content issues all the time. Some of it's in the process. Was over processed, to look too video-ish, didn't look enough like film. Well, we kind of don't have enough time and money to monkey with them too much, so they still look like film. And some people think you should leave in all the scratches and bumps and bruises, but when these films first came out, they were pristine and beautiful films. And if you went to see some of these films, even the early ones, if you went and saw them in a big city, you saw a nice, sharp, clean print. Now, if you saw it out in in Peoria or somewhere, Hickville, by the time you got the print, it probably didn't look so well. But we want to restore what the premiere saw, not what the last guy on the film film exchange thought. So,
yeah, as you say, it's like restoring that experience as well, isn't it? As well as the film, you're trying to recreate the experience for folks. No, I get that absolutely. So the set itself, we've got 35 shorts over 2 discs. I've dipped into it. I've just said I watched When Nights Were Cold, fabulous, and also I watched Twins, Stan Laurel's Twins, and Wandering, is it Papa or Papa? I don't know how you'd say it. Wandering Papa, I think we'd say it over here. And Brothers Under the Chin as well with Jimmy Finlayson and Noah Young with Stan. Fabulous. And they certainly do look like film. There's absolutely no over processing, I would say, on that, exactly as I would expect to find, especially for the age of those films. But I just wanted to, I've named a few of the titles there. Can you give us your highlights of the set?
Well, one of the ones you mentioned, When Nights Were Cold, that was probably, it might be my favorite of the stands on there. When we opened up the facility in Culpeper, the Library of Congress, and I came here about a year after they opened, but they're just getting ready to start putting material out on the film processor. They've been testing and all that. So they said, "Hey, send up something you want to get a print of." And I looked in the catalog, and we had a negative of half of When Nights Were Cold. Looked up the other half. It had deteriorated in 1948 at the lab, not our lab, but whoever had it before us. So I just happened, just merely by coincidence, When Nights Were Cold was the first print produced by the Culpeper version of the Library of Congress. The first accepted print out of the lab was When Nights Were Cold.
Fantastic.
And so then when you watch it, because it's one of those films that I'd heard about. Stan talks about it. I think it's in when I think Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy talks about it a bit.
Yeah.
And you always heard there were some, perhaps even Monty Python-esque references, or
yes, definitely,
the reverse that they picked up on him. And so When Nights Were Cold is a particularly good one. It kind of proves my premise that Stan in his solo careers did best when he was making parodies, or as they were known then, travesties. And,
yes,
the films aren't travesties. Other ones, I like The Whole Truth. The Whole Truth was one of those films where they needed another film, so they shot some courtroom scenes and they threw in outtakes from Roughest Africa and a couple other films. And I kind of always like those kind of films that are kind of made up of other films. In a way, they're kind of the bargain basement, but they're still films. It's interesting. It's interesting to have Stan in court and we retelling a story. All of a sudden, you're flashing back to Roughest Africa. It's like, wait a minute, I saw that movie. So I like those. The Pest is a great one because they use a pair of stairs. It may not be the stairs, but it's a really early use of stairs. And the fact that was 10 years before the Music Box tells you Stan was thinking. And you see these stairs and go, God, if you drive, if you ever have the chance to be in LA and you drive and you see some of those stairs, there is something funny about those stairs. Just looking at them, going like, why are they there? So to use them as a comedy prop, it was pretty ingenious. So, those are some of the Stan Laurel ones. A lot of these I didn't get to see until actually we started this project, because most of the Stan Laurel films came from Serge Bromberg. Right. So a lot of those I've just seen, Brothers Under the Chin and some of that. The great thing about a lot of the Stan films are you get people like Jimmy Finlayson. You get a bit more of the Hal Roach stock company than you do with the Hardy films.
Yes,
but so,
and of course we get Finlayson with no mustache as well at the start of Brothers Under the Chin.
Yeah, and it's like grow the mustache back, Jimmy.
Paste it back on quick.
Yeah, and there, I mean, looking at the list, there's actually a few of these that I'm not the world's biggest fan of, even though I'm the biggest fan of their solo films. There's a few that I could do without, but not many, and they all look better than you've ever seen them before. On the Hardy side, I would have to say, I like the Serenade, which is a Plump and Runt. Which again, they're street musicians. So, if you want to think you're darn tootin', go ahead. But if you don't want to, that's almost kind of where the two things match.
Right.
Because they use the instruments as part of as far as the humor. They're supposed to, the local bar says, we'll fill up your instrument. Well, Hardy's playing the clarinet and Billy Rudge is playing the little tuba, and they switch instruments because it's more beer for Babe. So so it's actually the instruments were part of the humor, not just a prop. But then you have people like Billy Bletcher in there, as the band leader. So that's one of the great things about all these solo films is you get to see a lot of these guys that people they worked with that few became stars and most of them didn't, but who's going to turn down a chance to see George Rowe or Larry Seaman or even Billy West or it's just fun. There's a one called Rivals, which is like 1925. It's pretty late. One of the last things Babe did before he went off to work with at Hal Roach. And it's he's the rival of Billy West, who by this time Billy West wasn't doing. He'd quit imitating Charlie Chaplin, I guess was imitating Monty Banks or something. But he was just playing playing his own character, and that was those films were always kind of fun to me because I really never discovered those films till I was researching the Laurel Hardy book, because I always thought Babe worked with him, in those fake Chaplin films, and that was it. But they actually had 7 or 8 years later had a kind of a renaissance of association. And so, I like the Rivals. He's In Again's kind of fun because, it takes place in a bar. And if you look back and you see a guy playing the piano, the guy at the piano is Charlie Chase. Because
right.
as Charles Parrott, he directed the film. And, right. Hardy and Chase worked together an awful lot. Most of those have been put out, so they're not on this set. But right. When he got to Roach, he was probably more than anybody up until the time he switched over to Stan Laurel. Most of the time he was either supporting Clyde Cook or most of the time Charlie Chase. It was nice to see that their association started even earlier than, I think 1918 was the first time the two of them worked together. And so, with the solo films, you get to see all these different parts that kind of converged at some point in Culver City. And all these films are great films, but even as a solo guy, you have to admit that maybe the films when they were together are better.
At last, you are using my brain.
But seeing the lead up to that and seeing all these different parts kind of flying around, it's the equivalent of looking at puzzle pieces. And then once you get the puzzle together, all the individual pieces are worthwhile. They don't make a whole lot of sense until you put the puzzle together. I'm not one of those that believes that, if they hadn't gotten together, we'd never heard from them. I think Stan Laurel was too talented of a comedian to not have had some impact in the history of cinema. I think Hardy was, I think when he decided he wanted to not do slapstick comedy, he could have moved into doing character roles, whether those would be comedic or dramatic. He certainly could have fit in making, doing musicals.
Yes, I was just going to say that,
because he had a great voice. So, and I think the solo films kind of proved that a bit, that yes, the two together were beyond great. But while the sum total was great, the individual parts were pretty darn good too. So, so those are a few of the ones we made sure we didn't duplicate anything. Something like Detained might have been out before, but a lot of that, including the neck stretching hanging scene, have been put back into the film. So when people look at those 35 films and they notice 4 or 5 that have been on some other set, rest assured that what you're seeing is a vast improvement over what you've seen in the past. And the other 30 are ones you've never seen before. A few of these, I know where they came from. There were a couple collectors that had film, and in a few cases they didn't realize what they had. And when we got the films, it's like, oh, look, it's Oliver Hardy. So I think the set as a whole people will enjoy. A great deal of it was from 35 millimeter prints. Very, very little negative around on that stuff, but pretty good prints, and the sharpness on it. For being one of those guys that grew up watching doopy 16 millimeters projected at a pizza parlor to get my fix on silent film, ran at the wrong speed. Everyone thinks it's poor photography, scratchy, and jumping around. It's not. They knew how to make films back then, and some of these are just sparkle. There's I can't remember if it's a Lucky Strike or the Candy Trail, one of the early Hardys. There's a couple close-ups of him that are just razor sharp, and you see where he got the nickname, Babe, because of being the, nice a baby with the big round cheeks.
Well, it's a funny way that I got the name of Babe. That was years and years ago, and then I had my first shave. So the barber went in, and he charged a dime, and he put some powder. He says, "That's all right, baby. You're clean."
Can you split them yourself, Babe versus Stan, in terms of what are your favourites? If you could only have one or the other of them, would you have Babe's films or would you have Stan's films?
Well, if you read my book. My book has more pages on Babe, and Babe comes first.
I just to put that down to the fact there's those many more films of Babes. That's all. It's a volume thing.
Well, I have 3 sons, and I love them all, and I can't name one as a favorite. So, if I had to pick, but seriously, if I had to pick, I would pick Babe Hardy.
Yeah,
and in part because everybody else would pick Stan Laurel, and I love Stan Laurel to death. I think he was. It upsets me that people don't list him or them in the same sentence as they do, Keaton, Lloyd, Chaplin, or whatever.
Yeah.
I actually list those 2 first. And Stan is he was a comic genius, and but I would lean towards Babe, partially because I tend to lean towards the underdog. Although Babe was certainly the underdog, but I don't know. I like the other guy. It's like When Star Wars first came out, I didn't see it. I literally didn't see the film for like 10 years because everybody was going to see Star Wars. So I thought, I'll go see the latest Dirty Harry movie instead. I don't like things that are overhyped. Yeah. And to be honest with you, every once in a while somebody will get on the Stan Laurel bandwagon, and it's like, man, they were a comedy team.
Yeah. And absolutely right.
You can't look at it, and you cannot look at it and try to dissect it into, but Stan did 79.4% of all the work. Watch the films. Yeah. And without the 2 of them.
Yeah.
And so the thing about Babe that interests me a lot is that we kind of know Stan's story a little bit because we know Charlie Chaplin's story.
Yeah.
And since Stan was his understudy, we know that story a lot. Where with Babe, it was kind of like what little we knew about him, most of it was wrong.
Yeah. And,
it was like somebody in the publicity department said, well, I think he needs to have gone to the University of Georgia. And it's like, well, but he didn't.
Yeah.
I had more fun when I wrote the Laurel Hardy book. I had more fun digging into Babe Hardy because there was less known about him.
Yeah.
So since that's where I spent most of my time, that's what I ended up liking. So there's your answer. Babe Hardy.
Makes sense. No, that makes sense. And to be honest, Rob, I think I would probably agree with you. And I if I'd have asked myself this question, maybe just a few days ago, I think I probably would have said. I went through a phase of being quite obsessed with Stan Laurel early comedies, the solo comedies, and I got really interested in them. But the more you kind of watch that, I feel like I get worn out watching them because he's trying so hard. I feel like when he's as part of the team, the Laurel and Hardy team, it's just so easy and so natural and so slow and relaxed, and it's a beautiful thing to watch Stan when he's the Stanley character. But in the solo films, he's trying so hard to be this leading character. He just kind of wears me out after a while. And then when you look at Babe is just a natural, isn't he, in front of the camera? It's just whatever he's doing, he's just brilliant. It's just so easy. It makes it look so easy.
Well, and I think, early on, their background show a bit. Stan was born on the stage. He's playing to the back row. Yeah. Hardy got into it in film. He's playing to that front of that camera. He's playing to that camera lens. Yeah. Even so much that early on, I mean, if you look at his films early on, you get that kind of look at the camera every once in a while, like, can you believe what that guy's doing? I mean, some of those Ollie mannerisms he had early on. The thing about Stan, though, that I think people miss sometimes is we weren't supposed to be watching these movies in clusters. Yeah. We weren't supposed to, and you say Stan wore you down a little bit. Yeah. Try watching 3 or 4 or 5 Larry Seaman films in a row and you go, oh my God. Yeah. But we weren't supposed to see him that way. Yes. Yeah. That's watch a good point. 4 or 5 episodes of I Love Lucy in a row and you want to go choke Lucille Ball because they did certain things in a repetition because, let's go see a so-and-so film. You didn't want that person to be different every time you saw them. Yeah. So there's certain things in these guys' films that are repetitious. Yeah. That they do that you go, oh my God, don't laugh at yourself again, Stan. Yeah. Quit laughing at yourself. Yeah. Well, he did that 6 months ago. Yeah. In our timeline, he did it an hour ago when I put in the other disc. But in their world, it was 6 months ago or a year ago. Yeah. And also, we're looking, we now, we can't help but, we're looking at the solo films through the rose-colored glasses of the team, so the solo films will never live up to the team pictures. Yeah. Yeah. There's context all the time, isn't it? You have to keep it in context. Absolutely right. And just a last question on the solo films, and I think you've probably already answered actually. Any more to come? But by the sounds of it, there probably are some. If it's if we're talking about Babe Hardy, certainly. Well, I don't think, unless there's someplace they're hiding someplace, there's very little of Stan that isn't out. There may be a few instances where something could get upgraded a bit, but as far as title-wise, unless they're hiding in some foreign archive, there's just not much there left. I always keep open in fact, I think an excerpt of one is on the set. One of Oliver Hardy's LKO films that he made in around 1918, Hello Trouble, is on the set. And 3 or 4 others of his LKO films, mostly directed by Charles Parrott, exist and are out there. But a year before he showed up at Universal, who controlled Nestor and LKO, Stan was there. None of his work appears, and I kind of wish it would. I'd love to see Hickory Hiram or something like that. But, But so Hardy. I guess if this set does really well, I would plead, Flicker Alley and or Surge to do another set. Yeah. Because we do. We probably have 4 or 5 more hours worth of Hardy material. Oh, now, fantastic! Granted, it starts to be a little lesser material, because we tried to make this set as good as possible. But a bad Babe Hardy film is better than a good, pick your comedian film.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
I'm hoping there'll be something else, a couple of years from now.
Yeah.
Come out. It'll probably just be Babe Hardy.
Yeah, well, we've got plenty to be going on within the meantime. We've got 35 ones to go out. Just a question as well. We talked very briefly just about the Slapstick Symposium discs that are, have been out. Because, I don't know, unless I'm missing something, there was only one Babe Hardy one, and I've got 2 Stan Laurels. Is that right?
Yes, that was Serge Bromberg.
Right.
You like Stan Laurel better than you like... No. I think Serge did a great job with those.
Yeah.
I think he has tended to collect more towards Laurel than Hardy.
Right. That's fair enough. Yeah.
So
yeah,
maybe we can get out. A year or two we can get out another Hardy disc, kind of balance it out.
Yeah, definitely.
The fact that I can't remember current count, but Stan made 90 some odd solo films and Hardy made 270 some odd. So the odds are more Hardy's going to appear. I was watching I was just pulling out any Lubin film we had at the archive. I pulled out one a year or so ago called Magazine Cooking. It's about a newlywed. She gets married and she decides, I'm going to cook for my husband. So she looks up a recipe and she goes down to the butcher shop and she buys a goose to take back to. Well, she goes and the butcher comes up and hands her the goose, and she thanks him and walks off. The butcher was all over Hardy. 10 seconds. I think 10 seconds if you count real fast, and that's all he's in the film, which tells me Hardy's filmography probably will never be ever absolutely definitive. I think I did a pretty good job on it in the book, but things keep popping up all the time.
Well, that's good. That's great. Keeps it nice and exciting for us, doesn't it? You never know what tomorrow will bring. I love it. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Rob. And I am going to finish, if we may. I'm going to ask you the Atoll question. We didn't get a chance to do this when we first spoke on episode 1 because I hadn't come up with it at that point. So if you are ready, sir, I am going to drop you off at an atoll, deserted atoll, and I'm going to let you take with you the following items: a Laurel and Hardy silent short, a Laurel and Hardy talkie short, a feature film, and also a Laurel and Hardy book. And also, I'm also going to just throw in as well a Stan Laurel solo and an Oliver Hardy solo as well.
Thank you for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Okay, so I told you before I have 3 sons. I love them all, and I wouldn't want to have to pick between them. So, as cruel as this question is, these questions are. I will attempt to answer them. So solo, Laurel and Hardy silent. There's a bit of me that wants to say Lucky Dog because that's a little bit of a cheat because it's really a Stan Laurel. It's definitely a Stan Laurel solo film that Hardy happens to be in. But it is kind of a wonderful little precursor to things to come. So there's some endearing things into that. And I actually just like the films from around that era, the early 20s rather than the late 20s. But if you think about a team film, love Big Business, love Two Tars, but I'm not one of those guys that likes to jump on the bandwagon. So,
of course, that should be interesting now. Yeah, come on.
So I had to narrow it down to between Finishing Touch or You're Darn Tootin', and I decided the silent film I would take would be You're Darn Tootin'. Okay,
love it.
Just because I like the kind of the snowball effect. One little thing that leads to this happens in Two Tars too, but that whole idea about and the whole pie scene from Battle of the Century is one little thing happening and then a little bit bigger thing, a little bit bigger. But so You're Darn Tootin' is my Laurel and Hardy silent. As far as sound goes, that's a hard one. I think the first sound Laurel and Hardy I bought from Blackhawk Films. I never collected much, but I had 10 or 12 films. Men of War was the first one I bought, and it's a fine film.
Yeah.
I almost picked La Vida Nocturna because I actually think it's better than Blotto.
Yeah.
At one time was substitute teaching, and I had 3 classes of English speakers and 3 classes of Spanish speakers.
Right.
And so I played each one the film. So I saw both those films, and, but I won't go there. But my first exposure to Laurel and Hardy was the Youngson compilations. And then our local TV station played, the Fox films, Bullfighters, Jitterbugs, Great Guns.
Yeah.
Which I love. In fact, the first Laurel and Hardys I ever seen were like Great Guns and that. And I was like, these guys are great. Only to find out later, no, those aren't great. But since I thought those were great,
yeah.
I finally went down to our local library because they were showing real live film, and I'd pretty much just seen everything on TV. And they ran 3 films: The Adventure with Charlie Chase, Barney Oldfield's Race for Life, and Perfect Day. And when they ran Perfect Day, again, I loved the Fox era Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah.
I saw Perfect Day, and it was like, what? It was just such a kind of euphoric experience. Oh my God, what am I seeing here? So I have to go with Perfect Day just because, obviously, I can't tell how many times I've left somewhere and go, goodbye, and then everybody else is, and so it has its own little following.
Going on a picnic. You got a lovely day for it. Yeah, you bet. Well, goodbye. 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 Enjoy yourself. Goodbye. 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 Bye. Well, goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.
But it's so endearing to me as far as just my exposure to Laurel and Hardy that,
yeah,
you can pick a ton of them. There's again, a few I don't like, but Perfect Day would be my sound.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And your feature film?
Well, I almost said Blockheads just to get Dave Lord Heath mad at me, but there's a lot. I'll tell you the ones I don't like. The ones I don't like are the ones where they started bringing in a romantic subplot.
Yeah. Yep.
I would be perfectly fine to have Stan and Ollie in the Swiss Alps and not have anybody else there, much less a couple B actors making goo-goo eyes at each other. So I like the Laurel and Hardy films, Way Out West.
I'm with you.
Sons of the Desert. And so I guess I'd have to go. I guess I'm going to, this is one of those ones where I'm going to be like a lot of people. I'm going to go with Sons of the Desert because it's kind of the best of Laurel and Hardy. It's them against the wives. Yeah. And it's got great music. Honolulu Baby come on. Yeah. I almost went with Pardon Us because I love Lazy Moon. I love Hardy's rendition. Rendition of Lazy Moon, but Honolulu Baby.
While down on the South Sea Island, underneath the beauty of the stars, I strayed upon some maidens who were strumming on their guitars. A hula maid was dancing, and I knew I'd found my paradise. So this is what I told her as I gazed into her eyes. Honolulu, baby, where'd you get those eyes and the dark complexion I just idolized? Honolulu, baby, where did you get that style and those pretty red lips
And you get Charlie Chase. So if you're a fan of all three of those guys, it's unfortunately the only rarest of rare feature appearances by Charlie Chase.
Say, by the way, what part of California you fellas from?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles? What a small world. What a small world. Would you believe it? I got a sister lives out there. Yeah, no kidding. Haven't laid eyes on her since I got out of reform school. So I got a great idea for a gag. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call her up long distance and disguise my voice, and she won't know who it is. Oh, that's a dog. Hey, waiter. Another bottle of bubble water. Be right back, fellas.
So there you go. That's my
love it.
My Laurel and Hardy.
Great choices. Great choices, Rob.
Book, there's no question, hands down. Didn't even have to think about this one for 2 seconds. My book. No, not my book.
I was going to say, and I forgot to say you can't choose your own book, so I was hoping you were going to pull yours out.
No, because that's not a Laurel and Hardy book.
True, but I would have let you have it. Yeah.
It has to be Laurel and Hardy, the magic behind the movies by Randy Spread.
Of course.
Randy and I are old pals from way back when. And I was a teenager and I started a Sons of the Desert tent, and he heard about it. So I started picking him up, and he came to the meetings. And I think we were probably like 17 and 15 at the time. And, we went off to college and then got married and had kids and stuff. And we kind of lost touch for a bit. He kept running the tent for forever. I ran it for 3 years. He ran it for 25 or so. But I was in college up finishing my degree a little bit late in life. I was like 30. And I had some free time. I went to the library and I saw the first edition of his book. And I'm, oh my God, I know this guy. So I checked out the book and went home and read it and went, oh my God. Because I'd loved Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy, and I'd loved the films of Laurel and Hardy by William K. Everson. But there was something about both those books that kind of, as good as they were, skirted a little bit on the factual information. Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy is a wonderful read. But you got to, it's almost like a biopic. You have to be a little bit forgiving of the actual facts. But Randy's book was just a euphoric moment to read that book. And frankly, it also inspired me that's when I started writing Laurel or Hardy, because as great as that was, there were only like 2 or 3 pages at the beginning of that book talking about what these guys did before they got together, because it wasn't the point of the book.
Yeah.
So that really, those 2 or 3 pages are what led me to go, I need to find out more about this. So Randy's book was really an inspiration for what I did. So it has to be that book.
Brilliant. And your little bonus choices, your Laurel solos and Babe Hardy solo.
Jeez. I guess I'm gonna go with When Nights Were Cold as the Stan Laurel. Love Mud and Sand, love a bunch of others, but I have a little bit more direct connection with When Nights Were Cold. So that's my Stan Laurel. Oliver Hardy, I tried to think of a different one because I always say the same one, but I keep going back to the one. He did a film called A Warm Reception with Kate Price. Second or third film he did after they quit doing the Plump and Run films. Mm-hmm. So this would have been Vim 1960. And you get Hardy in drag and you get all kinds of things. But it was the first film, well, not the first film, but one of the few surviving films from that early that has Babe as a solo lead comedian. Yeah. And it showed to me like, hey, wait, this guy knows his stuff. So A Warm Reception would be my Hardy solo. When Nights Were Cold would be my Stan solo. Fabulous.
Rob, thank you ever so much. It has been a joy to talk to you again, and hopefully it won't be for the last time. I'm sure if we can get this Babe Hardy release sorted out, maybe in a small amount of time, we'll get you back on. But Rob, thanks ever so much, and for coming on such short notice as well. It's been great. So thanks ever so much.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. And we'll speak to you soon. Take care, keep laughing, and stay safe.
All right, bye-bye.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our look at the new Blu-ray release. And remember, even if you don't have a Blu-ray player, you can purchase the DVD version from the French Amazon site. To make it a bit simpler, you can visit the shop page on the Laurel and Hardy blog website, and you can find quick links to both of those releases. Oh, and I'll also put links in the show notes too. So that's about it for this bonus episode. Do look out for episode 11 coming along in a few weeks, where we will be back to the normal format and taking a close look at the next film in the Laurel and Hardy chronology, which is, of course, the 1927 short Putting Pants on Philip. Don't forget, for more Laurel and Hardy chat, you can become a member of the Blogheads community by joining the Blogheads Facebook group. And you can also follow the Laurel and Hardy blog on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube as well. Thanks, of course, must go to the brilliant Rob Stone, the Bohunks Orchestra for the fabulous music, but most of all, thanks to you for being here with me once again. So until next time, all that's left is to say goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.